Growing up, I was the only child, and I lived in Prairie Grove all my life. Started school in Prairie Grove, went all through, graduated high school. Um, I lived right where my mom still lives on the farm. She's she's 90 and still lives in the house that I grew up in, south of Prairie Grove. The first job I remember my dad having, he worked for two brothers, Bill and Pep Campbell, and they had a garage and a filling station down where the post office is now, right in that area. And Daddy had a garage on one side with Pep Campbell, and then Bill ran the gas station on the other side. That's the first memory I have before I started school. Then, whenever I started school, he had worked in the garage there where the town center is now. And then later years, he had a garage in the back there where Daisy and Olive is, and Hubert Keene and Geneva Keene ran a parts store, and he did mechanic work in the back. And that was the last job I believe he had. Mama worked, my dad farmed, and I remember when I got in high school, I cooked supper almost every night. Not every night, but a lot. And I just remember cleaning the house on Saturdays, but actually, and then I remember, we had cattle. Mom and Daddy had cattle, and I remember going down the field with them, and I remember them cutting hay. And before I was born, she worked at Campbell's Soup, and it was called Jerpies then. And then it was Campbell's Soup. But she worked there 12 years. I was born in 55, and she didn't work after that until I was 13, and she went to work for the locker plant in Cane Hill, and it was owned by Gett and Juanita McClelland. And she worked down there a short time, and then she came back to did the same work for the Mobley family in Prairie Grove, and they were located on Main Street down from where RVS Bank is now. Well, yeah, the east. And then she worked for them for 25 years where Razorback Pizza is now. I remember every Saturday night there would be people either at our house or we would go to their house. It was like 3 or 4 couple, friends of my mom and dad's. And we would cook out or do something like that or celebrate a birthday, whatever. And they would come. I can remember some friends of mom and daddy that didn't have a TV, and they would come up and watch the fights and the wrestling and ball games and stuff with my dad because they didn't have a TV. And I remember having, we either stayed at home or went to somebody else's house. And once in a while we'd go out to eat, but very seldom. I remember every Saturday we would take my grandmother, my dad's mom, downtown because neither one of my grandparents ever drove, and grandmothers. And we would take her downtown and let her out and just let her prowl all over town and do the trades day thing, put all the tickets in and all that and do a little shopping and come and pick her up. And because it was just different. It was so different then because people had time. I remember all the old men sitting on benches and along in front of mock clinic. I can remember old men sitting along there, and you'd stop and talk to them or they'd say something to you. But there was benches all along, and they liked to go into the Crescent and loaf. Frankie's grandpa loafed in there a lot, Jack Ditmars, and Neil's Dry Goods too. And but my earliest memory, I guess, would be going to school. I went the first year in the old elementary there on Neal Street. I went first grade, and then they built the elementary school that they just recently tore down. Everybody knew everybody. No one was any better than anyone else. I was in a really good class, though, of kids. We were all just best friends. I had lunch with one of them today. I have lunch with one of them every Wednesday. Just close. And I don't know, it was good. Debbie Kenyon, Kathy Brewster Hall, Jeff Feltner, Sheridan Allison, Connie Hodges Beal, Connie Davenport, Roger Hulse, Phil Smith, I can't even think, Sharon Nash, Darla Trout, I can't even think of any more of them. But I think there was 56 in our class. I think that was right, in 1974. I remember Wendell McEwen. Well, no, back up. Whenever I started school, Mr. Vandiver was the superintendent, and Tommy Venters was a principal, and his daughter was a friend of mine too, Vicki Venters. That's who I remember. That's who was there when I started. And then I can remember every one of my teachers. So when we lived up the road a little ways from here, up on the corner there, we had some neighbors who lived across the road. Their names were Ed and Audie Rich, and he sold real estate. And then let me think. Oh, Mac Murray's were on the other side of us, in between us and what's now Prairie Grove Health and Rehab. And she was my first friend, actually. Colleen McMurray was, because we lived neighbors. Oh, and Randall Reef was in my class too. He was one of my first friends. The Eat Shop, that was a little restaurant that a man and woman ran, and Irene Davis worked in there. And it was there where Temple Skelton has her little shop now. And then I remember the B&K, which was Kenny Bartholomew and Hubert Keene started that. That's where Daisy and Olives is now. And I remember Guy Sparks had a grocery store on the street. It was the Fairway. And of course the Crescent was there, and Neil's Dry Goods. And then there was a hardware store that Frank West and George West ran along the street there too. Probably about where Crawley's are now, maybe. And then there was the Cleaners. Gosh. And of course the Southern was always there. And then, of course, the bank. I remember going in the bank when I was a little girl. There was one door, and I remember Santa Claus always set out in front of the bank at Christmas, and that was Mamie Vincent's dad that played Santa Claus, I believe. But anyway, and then the flower shop, Charles Knowles, his wife had a flower shop, and then there was the locker, and then there was a parts store too along on the north side of the street. J.G. Ward had it, and then there was an eye place, as Dr. Ward had an eye. What am I trying to say? Eye clinic, and then there was the mock clinic. We always went to the mock clinic, but a lot of people went to the Elizabeth Hospital, but because Dr. Baggett was who we went to. And that's about all I remember. Then there was a grocery store down behind where, let's see, what's there now? Oh, Extra Life carpet cleaners. There was a grocery store in there. Ab Vlines ran that. I can't remember her name. I remember going to the library, getting to ride your bicycle to the library. We just played either I'd go to a friend's house or they would come here, and we played outside. And I know, since I was the only child, I really didn't have anybody, and I remember the neighbors across the street, their great-grandsons would come and spend the summer with them, and I played with them all summer long. We would play outside until dark, and get up, early and play till dark. Catch lightning bugs, spray water on each other, go out on the field and picnic. And I remember playing by myself for hours, just throwing the softball against the house or over the house, and then we would go, after I got older, we would go down to Carmen's drugstore or the Sterling. Sterling was there then, and get a Coke because they had the fountain and everything. We'd hang out down there. I started working for Dillon's in 1975 and worked there till 1987, and then I went to work for what was Farmers and Merchants then. Jim Reef hired me. I thought I died and gone to heaven. They were so good to me, and it was just, I went to work at 8 o'clock, took 2 breaks, and got off at 3. It was great. And Jim Reef and Wilfred Thompson and just a good bunch of people. And I knew so many people from the grocery store too, so that helped. But it was a different time. We had to file checks manually. We made our own statements. I think the bank went on computer system in 1977, so they were already, of course, on computer when I started. And I didn't do any of the hand posting or anything like that. Like, I know Jenny did some of that. anticipated that. I ran proof and worked in bookkeeping and worked in the drive-through technology and just everything is automated. We want people to come in the bank now, but then we give them everything not to come in the bank. ATMs, direct deposit, debit cards, everything like that. Farmers and Merchants was a wonderful place to work, but after Arvex took over, we did, as far as benefits, things like that, that was a plus, and you could, more chances of advancement than there was Farmers and Merchants, but I can't say anything bad about Farmers and Merchants at all. Greg wasn't there whenever I first started, but he was at Pea Ridge, I think, and then he came down to First Prairie Grove, and then when First Prairie Grove consolidated with us, when we became Arvex, that's when he came, and I think that'd be about 92 I started working with him. I think that's right. I remember my mom telling me about the railroad going through where Commercial Street is, and behind the mill. And then I guess it went across and came out over on the Lincoln Hill. Of course, that was before me. But I remember when I was a kid, we would go down to what is the Washington County Milling Company now and get feed, because Mom and Dad had cows and chickens and pigs and everything like that. And we'd go get feed. Atlas Cohee ran it then. I remember doing that. Mostly everything, we did it at home. I mean, there wasn't a water park. I remember going out to Lake Weddington. I do remember going out there. I played softball in the summers. So, of course, it's not like it is now. There was 13 of us on the team, and we played maybe 5 teams. And that was the whole team in Prairie Grove. The first time I went to the Clothesline Fair, I was probably about 4 or 5, and my aunt and my great aunt and uncle took me, and I can just remember going. I can't remember a whole lot about it, but I remember we would walk up there because I had several friends that lived in town. Kathy Hall, I had another friend, Fern Kirkendall, and we would meet and walk up to the park and just hang out, just swing and do things like that. I don't remember doing a whole lot of things. I remember having picnics and stuff up there. Oh, all the building boom, all the houses. It's just amazing. The bypass going right through the middle of our farm. I mean, that's a big deal. So, I mean, and things building up, and like across the road here, they're putting in a duplex development, I guess you'd call, for folks 50 and over. And, Willow Creek. I mean, all these places. My dad cut hay, and I don't know how many did subdivisions, because my dad and his brother did custom hay baling, and they cut, I don't know how many of these development, so they cut hay in. A lot of, where Shady Acres is, I always cut hay there. And where the school is, where the high school, that's a big change. It's just all the building, and there's so many new people here, And I used to think I knew everybody. I don't anymore. But that's okay. That's a wonderful place to live. I can't imagine living anyplace else. I don't ever intend to. I've lived in 3 different places in Prairie Grove, and I've never lived anywhere else or been anywhere else. I'm kind of dull, but I can't imagine living anyplace else. I mean, my friends, to me, seeing them at the grocery store and hollering at you and knowing people, I just can't imagine ever giving that up. I don't intend to.